In just half a year, Luke had turned a wasteland into the most advanced place in the land. Luke's village has changed completely in just 6 months. Now, elves and dwarves are actually living together, which is something that never happened. The village even has a shop selling elf potions and grilled minotaur meat. It turns out there's a dungeon right in the village, and Luke is actually friends with the dungeon master, which is super rare. There's even a massive training building where a girl named Hazina practices high-level fire magic. Everything is way beyond what anyone expected. The village is booming because adventurers are coming from everywhere to explore the dungeon. Ally, the dungeon master, has already expanded it to 10 floors. Luke uses a special skill to check every adventurer and give them helpful gifts for their journey. Plus, the weapons here are top quality and cheap because dwarf blacksmiths make them using materials from the dungeon. The population has already crossed 6,000 people, making it look like a small city. One day, a magistrate named Danto visits Luke with some big news. Luke's family, the Albels, finished a war in just 1 month and took over a lot of land. Luke's younger brother, Raoul, was the hero of the war and is now in charge of the old family territory. Danto warns Luke that Raoul is a coward who will see this successful village as a threat. Even though Luke just wants to build a peaceful place, his friends Miria and Saren know that Raoul will eventually try to get rid of him. Meanwhile, Saren's father, Seeds, is having a hard time. He keeps sending messengers to bring Saren back home, but every single one of them ends up quitting their job and moving to Luke's village because the food is delicious and the hot baths are amazing. Finally, he sends his son Sirius to bring her back. Sirius is a talented fighter who uses 2 swords and magic, and he's fresh off the battlefield. When Sirius arrives at the village, he is shocked. He sees massive walls, giant crops, and a huge tree that looks like a dragon. He meets Luke and Saren, but when Saren refuses to go home, Sirius decides to use force. He orders his elite soldiers to attack, thinking they can easily beat the amateur villagers. But he was totally wrong. Every single villager has a special fighting gift. In a matter of moments, Sirius's entire squad is beaten and lying on the ground. He stands there completely confused, realizing he totally underestimated how strong Luke's people really are. Sirius was in total shock because his elite squad got wrecked by a bunch of villagers. He tried to fight his sister, Saren, but she had become way too strong for him. She had been training hard in dungeons while he was just relaxing, so Sirius finally gave up and dropped his sword. Just then, Luke ordered his people to heal everyone, including their enemies. A beautiful elf named Philia came over to help Sirius. He had never seen an elf before and was so stunned by her beauty that his face turned bright red and he fainted. He eventually sent a short note home saying he wouldn't be coming back because he had fallen in love. Back at the capital, Raoul was getting more and more angry. He heard rumors that Luke was building a massive city, but no one he sent to check ever came back. He sent a secret team to investigate, and they were blown away by the huge walls and great roads Luke had built. But suddenly, the ground vanished and the whole team fell into a trap. They found themselves in a moving jail cell underground. A scary old lady named Nema showed up and started questioning them with a creepy smile, making the experienced soldiers shake with fear. Raoul's next plan was to send a young guy named Rain to sneak in as a merchant. Rain was a total amateur and was terrified of getting caught. The second he entered the city, Luke walked right up to him and introduced himself. Rain thought he was done for. Luke took him to a mansion for questioning, and when Rain saw the scary old lady Nema, he got so scared that he spilled all the secrets about Raoul's plan. Instead of ending him, Luke sent Rain to live in a new building with the other people they had captured. Rain was terrified of what came next, but he was at least glad to be alive. Rain entered the building, shaking with fear because she expected the worst. But instead of a torture room, she found a clean place and met a guy named Hans. He was an investigator who got caught earlier, but he looked totally healthy and happy. Hans explained that life in the village was actually great, with good food and easy work. He told her that Lord Luke was a kind leader, unlike the mean Lord Raoul. Rain soon realized this village was like a paradise and started enjoying her life there. Hold up! Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, "I'm loving it." I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. Meanwhile, Raoul was getting more and more angry. None of his spies were returning from the wasteland. He found out that Luke had built a massive city with 10,000 people in less than 2 years. Feeling threatened, Raoul lied to everyone, saying Luke was planning a rebellion. He gathered 5,000 soldiers to crush the village. When Magistrate Danto heard about the army, he immediately took his family and ran to Luke's village to warn him. Luke couldn't understand why Raoul was so obsessed with him. While some people were scared and wanted to surrender, Luke stayed calm. Just then, his village reached level 8 because the population grew so much. He got a huge point bonus and a new skill to make his villagers even stronger. That night, Raoul's army camped near the wasteland. Out of nowhere, Luke appeared right in the middle of the camp to talk to Raoul. He told Raoul that he had no interest in the family's power or the throne. Raoul didn't listen and tried to have him arrested, but Luke vanished instantly using a secret tunnel he had built. The next morning, Raoul's soldiers were nervous. They had heard stories about Luke's powers and didn't really want to fight. Raoul didn't care and pushed them forward, wanting to see Luke suffer. But when they finally reached the wasteland, Raoul and his army stopped in their tracks. They saw something so big and unexpected that even Raoul was left speechless. Luke had used his new level-up powers to finish a massive project that changed the whole landscape. Luke used his village-building gift to create massive stone walls that were 10 meters high and 5 meters thick. He didn't just build a simple wall. He turned the entire area into a giant maze to protect the village from an incoming army of 5,000 soldiers. His friends, like the former noble Saren and her brother Sirius, were completely shocked. They felt like Luke's power was basically a cheat code. Even Milia, a girl who always supported Luke, was excited to see such a huge project finished in no time. Soon, an army led by Raoul arrived at the wilderness. Raoul was Luke's brother and a strong fighter who had the Sword Saint gift. He was confused because these massive walls weren't there the day before, but he was too proud to turn back. He ordered his 5,000 soldiers to charge straight into the maze, thinking they could just crush everything with numbers. Once the army was inside, the nightmare started. Luke could actually move the walls of the maze in real time. Every time a group of soldiers went into a dead end, Luke would shift the walls and trap them. Raoul's army started to shrink fast as units of 500 men were cut off and locked away one by one. Raoul was getting frustrated and scared, especially when he heard strange rumbling sounds of the walls moving around him. By the time Raoul finally reached the village gate, he only had about 1,000 men left. Luke was waiting there with just 200 people. Raoul thought he still had the advantage and ordered a full charge. But as they rushed forward, Luke used his power to make the ground under them vanish, turning it into a deep water moat. Raoul and his men fell into the water, and just as they started swimming, Luke made the water disappear. The soldiers were slammed to the bottom, leaving them hurt and confused. While they were stuck at the bottom of the moat, a group of elven archers led by a girl named Philia appeared. They started shooting arrows down at the trapped soldiers. Raoul managed to use his sword skills to block the arrows and climbed out of the moat with his remaining 300 elite men. He was ready for a final fight, but then a massive tree dragon, a 30-meter monster made of wood and leaves, crashed into his army. The monster was so strong that it tossed the soldiers around easily. Raoul realized that Luke wasn't just a builder, but someone who could control monsters too. With his army falling apart and only 100 men left, Raoul decided to ignore the dragon and made one last desperate charge straight at Luke to end the fight. Raoul charged forward with everything he had, but a young guy named Noel stood in his way. Noel might have looked young, but he was a powerhouse with a massive shield and a special shield technique. Raoul thought he could just cut through, but Noel hit him with a shield bash so hard that Raoul went flying across the dirt. Raoul's soldiers were shocked. They only followed him because they thought he was the strongest, and seeing him get tossed like a toy killed their spirit. Luke, the village leader, saw his chance. He used a special skill called Villager Enhancement, which basically gave all his people a massive power boost for a few minutes. Even though Raoul's men were trained soldiers, they were no match for Luke's buffed-up villagers. It was a total beatdown. A blue-haired girl named Saren, who knew Raoul from before, walked up and told him to just give up because there was no way he could win now. Raoul wouldn't listen. He lost his mind and started glowing with a strange light rushing straight for Luke. Noel tried to block him again, but this time Raoul was moving with crazy speed and managed to push Noel aside. Just as Raoul was about to reach Luke, Luke used his building powers to instantly pop up a massive stone wall. Raoul slammed into it at full speed, making the whole ground shake. Before Raoul could even get back up, Luke turned that wall into a giant golem. The golem swung a massive fist and ended the fight right there, knocking Raoul out cold. While the villagers started cleaning up, a man named Seeds showed up with 500 soldiers. He was actually Luke's father and a local lord. He was a selfish guy who originally came to help Raoul because he thought Luke would lose. But when he saw the giant walls and realized Luke had won, he quickly changed his story. He acted like he had rushed there to save his children, pretending he was a hero all along. Instead of being cruel to the soldiers who lost, Luke had his healers and the local elves fix their injury. The enemy soldiers couldn't believe it. They had never seen someone so powerful be so kind. Luke didn't stop there. He used his powers to build huge 5-story apartment buildings on the spot so the surrendering soldiers would have a place to sleep. Looking at the massive city and Luke's incredible power, the soldiers started thinking that Luke was the one who actually deserved to be their leader. Luke was secretly excited to see how the enemy soldiers would react to the new apartments he built. He knew that once they saw how comfortable the village was, they wouldn't want to leave. As the soldiers walked into the buildings, they were totally shocked. They saw hot water coming out of pipes and realized they could take a bath whenever they wanted. Every room had its own kitchen and toilet. The beds were so soft that the soldiers started falling asleep almost instantly. They were completely sold on the place in just one night. In another part of the battlefield, a knight named Pell was stuck behind giant walls with his unit. He felt helpless until a mysterious voice spoke directly into his mind. The voice told him that the war was over because their commander, Raoul, had already been captured. Pell tried to act tough, but the voice pointed out that they were trapped and would eventually starve. Seeing no other way out, Pell ordered his men to surrender. To his surprise, the soldiers were actually happy to stop fighting. As the walls moved aside, they walked into a massive modern city. There they found their fellow soldiers having a huge barbecue. The meat and vegetables smelled so good that Pell couldn't help but drool. His old friends explained that Luke, the village leader, had prepared this feast for them because he knew they were hungry from the long march. To understand why this was happening, you have to look at the history between the two brothers. Raoul was the son of a maid and always felt like he was in the shadow of Luke, the official heir. But everything changed during their power ceremony. Luke received a gift called Village Building, which everyone thought was useless, while Raoul got the legendary sword Saint Power. Because of this, Luke was kicked out and Raoul became the new favorite. However, when Raoul heard that Luke had built a massive city in the middle of nowhere, he got scared of losing his position. He led 5,000 men to attack Luke, but he was totally outmatched. Luke used his powers to create a giant stone golem that knocked Raoul out. Raoul woke up in a clean prison cell, hoping it was all a bad dream. Luke showed up and offered him a high-quality steak. Raoul tried to stay angry, but the food was so delicious he ended up eating everything on the plate. Luke then made a smart deal. He told Raoul to go back home and tell everyone they fought a dragon instead of each other. This way, Raoul could keep his reputation as a hero, and Luke could keep living in peace. Raoul realized that Luke didn't even want the family title anymore. He was happy just being a village chief. When it was finally time for the army to leave, the soldiers were actually sad. They had spent a few days enjoying hot baths and amazing food. Raoul had to force them to move out because his men were already wishing they could stay in Luke's village forever. As they walked away, the soldiers felt like their vacation was over and they were heading back to a much worse life. Raoul and his army finally decide to head back to the capital. Luke uses his special building skills to erase the massive walls he created, which completely shocks Raoul. Before Raoul leaves, he shouts that he's never coming back, which is fine with Luke since it means no more fighting. Milia, Luke's loyal assistant, comes over to congratulate him on handling the situation so smoothly. Suddenly, Lord Bazrata shows up. He is the father of Saren and Sirius, two of Luke's companions. Instead of being angry, he is actually super impressed by the city Luke built in the middle of the wasteland. He leaves quickly to take care of his own lands, but tells Luke to keep looking after his kids. Saren and Sirius seem a bit annoyed by their dad's sudden change of heart, but Luke is just happy they can officially stay in the village. After the army leaves, Luke checks the new apartment buildings and finds 30 soldiers hiding in the closets. They aren't there to fight. They just love the village life so much they don't want to go back to the harsh military. Luke tells them they can stay as long as they let their families know. Even the former local leader, Dant, decides to stay and help Luke since he can't go back to his old job after siding against Raoul. Meanwhile, Luke's father, Marquis Edel, is becoming way too powerful. He just finished off his main rivals and took over their land. When the king sends a messenger to offer him a higher title to keep him happy, Edel gets insulted. He tells the messenger the king is weak and basically declares that he's going to take over the whole kingdom soon. Back at the village, things are booming. In just 1 month, the population jumps to 15,000 people. Everyone is talking about how great the food, the baths, and the houses are. A new magistrate named Michel is sent by the government to manage the area. Michel is a very relaxed and smart guy who worked his way up from a poor family. Michel visits the village and is blown away by how clean and organized everything is. He meets with Luke and Dant to discuss the future. Instead of trying to force the village to follow government rules, Michel drops a huge shocker. He asks Luke to let the entire northern district join the village. He wants Luke to be the boss of the whole region because the village is doing a much better job than the actual government. Michel, the new leader of the North, was totally shocked by how strong Luke's city had become. She asked Luke if he could help fix up Rieson, the biggest city in the area. Luke agreed because his special village powers now covered the entire district. He started by building a special stone road that connected his village to the city. This road was magic because it made anyone walking on it move super fast without getting tired. Luke and Michel basically zoomed across the land and reached the city in no time. When they arrived at Rieson, Luke used his powers to register all the residents as his villagers. Instead of breaking down the old buildings, he used his skills to instantly fix them up. He made the walls clean, fixed the leaks, and added things like better security and fresh air. He even turned empty houses into clean public toilets and big bathhouses. A local office worker came home and couldn't believe his eyes. His old house looked brand new, the air felt like a forest, and the streets were suddenly perfect. Luke then moved on to the farms. He upgraded the fields so crops would grow faster and better, and he even added a feature to keep bugs away. The old farmers were jumping with joy because they could move around like young men and do their work easily. After helping so many people, Luke's village reached level 9 because he now had over 30,000 villagers. He got a massive point bonus and unlocked new things like big refrigerators, art museums, office buildings, and even a dam to stop floods. He also got a cool new skill that let him pick up buildings and move them through the air. Right as he was finishing, a local village chief came to him, begging for help because their homes were always being ruined by a flooding river. Luke is a young noble who was sent to develop a wasteland. He has a special gift from his past life that lets him build structures instantly using points. One day, a village chief tells him how the local river always floods and kills people. Luke's assistant, Michelle, thinks a big project is impossible because they don't have the money, but Luke tells her not to worry. He uses his points to build a massive, high-tech bridge and a giant dam in a split second. The village chief is so shocked and happy that he starts treating Luke like a god. While they are checking the new dam, a giant 3-meter bear called a blood grizzly jumps out of the woods to attack. The guards are terrified and tell Luke to run, but he just walks toward it. He uses his power to build a stone wall right as the bear leaps. Then, he turns the wall into a giant golem that punches the bear until it runs away. After saving the day, Luke finishes building roads and houses for the whole district, making life much easier for everyone. When summer hits, the heat becomes too much for the people working outside. Luke decides to build a huge, lazy river pool that cleans itself automatically. He even uses his magic workshop to create modern swimsuits for his friends. When they go to test the pool, things get chaotic because Philia, an elf girl, shows up totally naked. She says that's just how elves swim, but the sight is so shocking that a guy named Sirius gets a massive nosebleed and almost faints. Luke has to give him a potion to save him and forces Philia to put on a swimsuit, so she doesn't cause any more accidents. To keep the fun going, Luke introduces a game called watermelon splitting. His friend Saren, who is a great fighter, uses her swords to perfectly slice a watermelon while blindfolded. Philia does the same thing but uses a bow and arrow from 50 meters away. Other strong guys in the village join in, like a spear user named Lando and a karate expert named Goat, who use their skills to smash the fruit in cool ways. It becomes such a hit that the whole village starts doing it every summer. Later, a villager named Burlet comes to visit with his wife and their new baby boy. He tells Luke that the birth was very easy and painless thanks to the magic clinic Luke built. Burlet is so grateful for everything Luke has done that he asks him to name the baby. Luke realizes this is a huge responsibility and starts thinking of the perfect name for the boy. Luke felt the pressure as the Burlet family stared at him with hopeful eyes. He quickly came up with the name Belk for their new baby, which was just a mix of the father's name and his own. The parents were thrilled, but this started a huge trend. Since the village was doing so well, many couples were having kids, and soon everyone was lining up to have Luke name their children. Some couples eventually came to Luke with a special request. They wanted a private place to spend time together away from their kids. Luke used his powers to build a hidden underground hotel. This wasn't just a normal building. It had special features that made people feel more energetic and romantic. He even built a bar district leading to the entrance, so people could visit the hotel secretly without being noticed by others. Miria, Luke's loyal maid, heard the village women talking about how amazing this hotel was. She started acting very strange and chased Luke down. Using a special high-speed move she called maid breathing, she snatched Luke up and carried him toward the underground hotel. She seemed determined to take him inside, but a staff member blocked the door. Since Luke was only 13, he wasn't allowed in, and Miria's plan failed immediately. The next day, Luke visited the farm area managed by a girl named Nell, who has a special gift for understanding animals. Thanks to the high-tech sheds Luke built, the animals had grown to a massive size. The cows were as big as houses and the chickens looked like giant monsters. Even though they were huge, they were very calm and provided a massive supply of milk and eggs for the entire village. Luke also checked on the tree dragon, a massive creature that looks like a tree. It had started producing babies that looked like small plants but could walk and move their branches. These little creatures were a bit too playful and tried to wrap themselves around Luke like ropes, but the parent dragon stepped in to keep them under control. An adventurer named Alec watched all of this growth with surprise. He remembered when this place was just a wasteland, but now it felt like a booming city. Luke had even started the first ever Adventurers Guild. This system allowed fighters to earn money by selling monster parts and completing jobs. Every adventurer was now given a rank from E to A based on their skills, making the village the perfect hub for anyone looking for work and better gear. The A-rank party known as Gurin is currently the talk of the town for constantly breaking dungeon records. The group is led by Alec, a 38-year-old veteran who finally feels like he's making it big after getting a special gift. His team includes Hazina, a popular 18-year-old girl, Dill the scout, and Guy the healer. They also hire a local villager named Kamuru, who has a special ability to navigate the maze perfectly. Kamuru is the same age as Alec and seems to have a crush on Hazina, though Alec thinks he has no chance. The dungeon is growing fast, adding new floors constantly. The first 5 floors are basic caves filled with goblins and kobolds. The team takes down the floor boss, an elder kobold, with one hit. In the next section, floors 6 to 10 are filled with forest plants and giant insects. After that, floors 11 to 15 turn into stone ruins where minotaurs live. The team takes down a black minotaur and sends the valuable meat back to the surface using a convenient transport service found in the dungeon's safe zone. As they go deeper, the environment changes to ice on floors 16 to 20. They easily deal with a pack of yetis using fire magic. On the undead-themed floors that follow, they defeat a powerful wight to get a high-priced staff. To survive the lava-filled floors from 26 to 30, they use special cooling potions made by the village alchemist. These potions make their bodies so cold that the heat doesn't bother them at all. While the adventurers explore, the village chief Luke meets with the dungeon master, a fairy named Ally. The dungeon grows by using points earned from visitors and residents. Luke helps Ally design new floors, treating it like a fun project. They plan to add a dark area and an underwater section filled with crab monsters. Luke wants to make sure the dungeon stays interesting and profitable for the village. Word about this amazing village spreads, reaching an adventurer named Geese. He doesn't believe the stories about a perfect city in the middle of nowhere, but he decides to check it out. When he arrives, he is shocked to see massive walls and top-tier facilities. He visits the training ground and spars with a local man who acts very humble. Geese is a trained swordsman, but he barely manages to keep up with the man. To his shock, the man reveals he isn't even an adventurer. He's just a regular farmer who uses the village training center. Later, Luke visits the public bath and notices something strange. Every single villager has become incredibly muscular. Their chests and arms are huge, looking like professional bodybuilders. Even though the villagers try to act like nothing is different, it's clear that the village's training facilities are turning everyone into super strong humans. Luke noticed that everyone in the village was suddenly getting super buff. Even regular workers like Burlet, who didn't need strength for their jobs, were now ripped. Burlet explained that the training ground Luke built had a special feature that made muscles grow way faster than normal. Even regular villagers were now strong enough to fight like professional adventurers. Luke was tired of being called cute and wanted to look cool, so he decided to train too. However, the muscular villagers, led by the village priest Milia, blocked his way. They loved his current look so much that they formed a physical wall of muscle to keep him away from the gym. Milia and her followers were determined to protect Luke's small physique at any cost. Next, Luke built a school to give the village kids a proper education. Milia volunteered to be a teacher, secretly planning to make sure the children grew up totally devoted to Luke. Along with the school, Luke added a library and an art museum to keep the village's culture alive, especially since many valuable items were being lost in the outside world due to constant fighting. A group of women led by a lady named Fauna soon arrived. They used to work as prostitutes and wanted to start a similar business in the village. Luke realized he had some unfair ideas about their work and decided to build them a safe, clean place to stay and work. When Fauna tried to flirt with Luke, she saw Milia's scary smile in the background and ran away in total fear. In a nearby town, a young healer named Muon was struggling because his magic was very weak. But after he moved into a new clinic built by Luke, his healing powers suddenly became much stronger. He even saved a guard who was nearly finished off by a monster by using a special potion he found in the clinic. When Muon visited Luke's village to investigate, he was shocked to find that these rare, life-saving potions were being sold like regular groceries. Leoninus, the leader of the elves living in the village, explained how this was possible. The village fields were so magical that rare herbs grew easily, allowing the elves to mass-produce potions that usually took years to make. While experimenting, the elves accidentally created a legendary elixir. They tested it on a mouse that had lost its tail, and the tail grew back instantly. Knowing that kings and nobles would start wars to get their hands on this miracle medicine, Luke decided to keep the elixir a total secret. Leoninus also showed off other new inventions, like potions that could make a person 10 times stronger or 10 times smarter for a short time. To prove it, the old elf drank a strength potion and cracked the ground with a single punch, showing that the village's technology was becoming incredibly powerful. Leoninus, the elf chief, wasn't usually known for his brains, but lately, he had become a genius at making potions. He showed Luke a new drink that boosts a person's stamina 10 times over. He was especially hyped because it was helping the elves have more babies, Even his own wife got pregnant for the first time in 50 years. He had already created over 30 types of potions, including ones that hide your scent or make your body super flexible. Luke was impressed but told him to slow down before things got too crazy. Then there's Doran, a dwarf who is finally enjoying life. Before moving to the village, his people lived in dark caves eating snakes and bugs. Now, Luke has given them a comfortable underground home where they have plenty of good food and unlimited alcohol. In return, the dwarves do all the heavy lifting and blacksmithing. They make weapons so good and cheap that visiting adventurers can't believe their eyes, as the same gear would cost 5 times more in the capital. One day, Doran called Luke to the workshop to see a young dwarf girl named Donna. Even though she's only 12, she has a special gift for making incredible weapons. She had already invented things like swords that turn into whips and prosthetic arms that move like real ones. This time, she showed off a sword that shot a massive bolt of lightning when she swung it. It was a legendary magic sword, a type of weapon that was thought to be lost to history. Luke knew they had to keep this a secret to avoid attracting unwanted attention from the outside world. Donna didn't stop there, though. She showed Luke a shield that reflects any attack back at the enemy, and a bow that fires arrows that automatically track their target. She even made tiny golem soldiers that run at enemies and blow up. When she showed him a metal tube that could fire rapid shots like a machine gun, Luke started to get a headache. He realized her inventions were moving way too fast for this world, and asked her to please hold back a little. Meanwhile, the village was running low on meat because they had been hunting too many orcs. To fix this, an elite team led by a girl named Saren headed toward the eastern mountain. The group included Philia, a talented elven archer, and her brother Sirius, who also uses magic. Thanks to the high-speed roads Luke had built, they reached the mountains in just an hour. They were looking for a new food source and soon found exactly what they needed. They ran into a monster called a cockatrice, which looks like a giant 4-meter chicken with a snake for a tail. These birds are very dangerous because their spit can turn anyone into stone instantly. However, the hunting team was too well coordinated. A girl named Noelle used her massive shield to block the bird's kicks and beak attacks. When the monster tried to breathe out a petrifying mist, Philia and Sirius combined their wind magic to blow the danger away. They easily took down 10 of these giant birds and headed home. When they returned to the village, Luke was shocked to see the size of the chickens they had caught. The team treated these legendary monsters like simple groceries because they were so much stronger than before. As they unpacked, Luke noticed Sirius turning bright red because Philia mentioned how well they worked together. Luke just laughed and told him to finally admit his feelings, ending the day on a light note. The village was doing better than ever. While Philia still didn't realize how much Sirius liked her, everyone else could see it. To celebrate a successful hunt, the village threw a massive chicken festival using meat from a monster called a cockatrice. Since many new chefs with special cooking powers had moved in, the food was incredible. They were serving everything from ramen to fried chicken, and the taste was so good that tourists were starting to visit just for the meal. While the village was partying, a nearby leader named Viscount Doltz was in big trouble. He was losing a long war against his rival, Viscount Franco. Doltz tried to call his soldiers to fight, but he found out his villages were empty. Over 50 villages had vanished because the people had all moved to Luke's thriving city. With his army gone and the enemy closing in, Doltz had no choice but to run away. He decided to head straight for the same wilderness city his people had fled to. When Doltz arrived, he was shocked. The village he heard about was now a massive city with giant walls and amazing technology. He planned to hide there and find a way to take his land back, but the city was so distracting that he almost forgot his mission. The food was too delicious, and the entertainment was too good. He and his men spent their days eating and watching plays instead of planning a war. Eventually, Doltz tried to start trouble by spreading lies to make the residents angry at the enemy army. However, Luke's guards caught him immediately. They sent Doltz and his men to a rehabilitation facility, a special building that fixes a person's personality. A month later, Doltz came out as a completely different man. He was crying and apologizing for being a selfish leader. He truly wanted to save his people now, not for pride, but because it was the right thing to do. Doltz asked Luke for help to take back his home from the mean Viscount Franco. Luke agreed and used his building powers to create a giant underground tunnel. This tunnel went all the way to the enemy's capital city. What usually took 2 days to walk only took 2 hours through the tunnel. Using a teammate's telepathy power, they tracked exactly where Franco was hiding inside his castle. While the village's elite fighters, led by a girl named Saren, prepared to pop out of the ground for a surprise attack, things were messy inside the castle. Franco's general, Rudolph, was frustrated because his boss was being lazy. Instead of securing the city, Franco was just partying and ignoring his duties. He had no idea that Luke's team was already inside the walls, ready to end his rule and take the city back. Luke had been helping Viscount Doltz rebuild his strength after losing his land to Viscount Franco. While Franco's man, Rudolph, was watching the castle, he noticed something strange. Mysterious stairs appeared in the garden and an elite group of fighters rushed out. These weren't regular soldiers. They had crazy powers like ice magic and super speed. One archer even shot an arrow that hit the wall like a falling meteor. Rudolph realized this was a surprise attack they couldn't stop. Inside the castle, Viscount Franco was busy drinking and being a bully to a young girl. He was sure he had won, but a panicked guard rushed in to say the enemy was already inside. Before Franco could even react, Doltz walked right into his bedroom. Franco was terrified and immediately did a giant apology jump, begging for mercy. Surprisingly, the two former enemies started talking and realized they actually got along well. They both decided to stop the war and asked Luke to help make their lands better. Luke accepted and added both territories to his special village. This caused the population to explode to over 100,000 people, which pushed the village to level 10. With this level up, Luke unlocked new buildings like hospitals, theaters, and even tall apartment towers. He also got a cool new skill called Body Double, which lets him create clones of himself that can think and talk. Luke started using these clones to handle work in different places. However, things got a bit messy when the villagers couldn't tell the difference between the real Luke and the clone. One day, Luke shifted his mind into one of his doubles to see what it was doing. He instantly got a shock because the clone was sitting in the women's bathhouse. The village ladies had invited the clone in, and it didn't know how to say no. Realizing he was in a very awkward spot, Luke quickly pulled his mind out and made the clone run away. Luke, who started a new life in this world with special building powers, was busy managing his fast-growing village. Because so many babies were being born, he used his points to build a high-tech hospital. This place used magic and modern medicine to make sure mothers could give birth without any pain or trouble. One day, a former bandit-turned-guard named Bale came running with crazy news. An old lady over 60 was pregnant. It turned out she and her nearly 70-year-old husband used a special elf potion to make it happen. This news went viral in the village, and soon all the other elderly couples were trying to have babies too. As the village kept growing, an advisor named Danto suggested that Luke needed a home that matched his status. Luke used his points to upgrade his mansion, but the result was shocking. Instead of a stone castle, a massive 30-story skyscraper appeared. It was 100 meters tall, shining white, and filled with modern things like elevators. The top floor was a luxury suite with a pool and a great view of the whole area. Luke worried that his house now looked way more impressive than the king's own palace. While the village was doing great, the royal palace was in a total mess. A powerful man named Marquis Albel had challenged the king, and the nobles were terrified. Many of the king's supporters were being taken out one by one in the dark. To keep their power, the corrupt officials wanted Princess Darania to marry the Marquis. King Darius XIII hated this idea, but he had very little power to stop them. The king decided to send his daughter on a secret mission to the Marquis' territory to find a way to fix the situation. Princess Darania and her loyal guard, Marisha, disguised themselves as poor sisters named Rhea and Risha. They left the palace in secret and started a long, dangerous walk toward the enemy's land, hoping to save their kingdom before it was too late. Princess Darania and her guard Marisha reached the city of Risen and couldn't believe their eyes. The place was spotless and the people looked healthy, which was the opposite of the dirty royal capital. They met Mitchell, the city's magistrate, who revealed a big secret. He wasn't just an official. He was a spy who had been working for Darania's father, the king, for 10 years. Mitchell led them further north into a wasteland that had been transformed into a giant, high-tech city. This was the work of Luke, the son of Marquis Albel. Luke had been kicked out by his family, but used his special building skills to create this massive place. When Darania finally met Luke, he was worried she was there to complain about his giant palace. Instead, she asked him for a massive favor. She wanted his help to stop his father, the Marquis, from taking over the whole country. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, Marquis Albel was acting like the new boss. He planned to marry Darania to officially control the kingdom, but King Darius dropped a truth bomb. He told the Marquis that his useless son Luke had built a city more powerful than the capital, and that Darania was hiding there. The Marquis didn't believe it at first, but his scouts confirmed the city was real and packed with people. He also realized his other son, Raoul, had been keeping this a secret from him the whole time. Furious that he had been played, the Marquis ordered Luke to hand over the princess. However, Mitchell had already set things in motion to force a confrontation. Luke sent a letter back refusing the order, basically picking a fight. Now the Marquis is heading back to his land with his army, determined to destroy the city and take what he wants by force. Luke was once an ordinary guy who got a second chance at life in a fantasy world. He was born into the noble Albel family, but was kicked out by his father, Marquis Albel, because his building gift seemed useless for war. Luke didn't mind and started his own peaceful village, which grew into a massive city. The conflict started because Marquis Albel and Luke had totally different ideas. Albel only cared about power and war, while Luke just wanted everyone to live a good life. Albel sent a message asking for a meeting at his castle, acting like he was doing Luke a favor. Luke went there, but he knew his father couldn't be trusted. During the meeting, Albel was very pushy. He told Luke to hand over Princess Saren and use his building powers to make fortresses for the army. Luke asked what Albel would do if he ruled the country. Albel proudly said he would force everyone into the army and attack all the neighboring lands. Luke told him that was a terrible idea and that a ruler's job is to make people's lives better, not sacrifice them for land. Albel got so angry that he pulled out his sword and finished off Luke right there, or so he thought. Luke's body suddenly turned into sand and crumbled. It was just a fake body double. The real Luke was safe at his village, and he had just officially declared war on his father. Albel didn't waste any time. He gathered a massive army of 20,000 soldiers. He even brought along 3 of his 4 generals. These are the strongest warriors in the land who have won countless battles. One of them, a smart strategist named Neon, stayed behind to guard the royal capital. Albel also brought his other son, Raoul, though he treated him poorly because Raoul had lost to Luke before. While Albel's army was marching toward the wasteland where Luke's village was supposed to be, Luke was busy with a crazy plan. Instead of building walls to hide, he used his special skill to move the entire village. The houses, the shops, and the massive walls all started sliding across the ground. Princess Saren couldn't believe her eyes, but for the villagers, seeing buildings move was just a normal Tuesday. Luke didn't just move the village to hide. He moved it straight to the royal capital. Back at the capital, General Neon was trying to keep things under control. Suddenly, his soldiers started panicking. Neon looked out from the palace tower and saw a giant high-tech city parking itself right next to the capital's walls. It was moving so fast it didn't seem real. Neon was a genius strategist, but this was way out of his league. His brain literally stopped working from the shock, and he started making weird noises as his pride crumbled. With the capital in a panic, Luke's villagers jumped over the walls and took control of the city. They used secret underground tunnels to sneak into the palace and quickly ended the fight. They rescued the king, who was Princess Saren's father. The king turned out to be a very kind man who was tired of Albel's bullying. When he looked out the window and saw Luke's city sitting there, he almost fainted. Meanwhile, Albel finally reached the wasteland with his 20,000 men. He was ready for a bloody battle, but there was nothing there. The entire city had vanished. All he found was a big stone monument with a note from Luke saying, "We moved to the capital for a bit." Albel was losing his mind with rage. Just then, a messenger rushed in with the worst news possible. The royal capital had been taken over in a single day, and General Neon had been captured. Albel realized he had been played, and his plan to rule the kingdom was falling apart. Albel's army was heading back to the capital to take it back, but the trip was a total nightmare. Every single night, mysterious soldiers would pop out of nowhere, burn their food and weapons, and then just vanish. The soldiers couldn't get any rest because of the constant alarm. Many got tired and just quit. Albel was stressed, but he refused to slow down because he didn't want other lords to think he was losing. By the time they finally saw the capital, more than half of his army was gone. When they arrived, they were shocked to see a whole new city sitting right next to the capital, and the walls looked way stronger than before. Suddenly, loud explosions went off. A dwarf girl named Donna, who is an expert with machines, started firing cannons from the walls. The soldiers had never seen anything like it and thought it was crazy powerful magic. Even more people ran away in fear. But Albel pushed the remaining men forward anyway. One of his top generals, a giant named Gayan who has unbelievable strength, smashed the main gate open with a huge club. But as soon as Albel and some of his men got inside, the gate was fixed instantly by magic, trapping the rest of the army outside. As they moved through the streets, more walls and cages popped up from the ground, splitting the army up even more. Soon, Albel only had 300 elite soldiers left. They finally reached the palace square, but it was another trap. The ground suddenly vanished and the soldiers fell into a deep hole. They lost their horses and had to fight on foot. Albel's top generals, like Maribura who uses earth magic, tried to fight back, but Luke's villagers were surprisingly strong. Villagers like Saren and Noel were holding their own against these famous warriors because of their special gear and boosted stats. Lord Albel was still a total monster though. He was knocking people around with massive shockwaves from his sword and heading straight for Luke to end him. Just as he was about to attack, Raoul jumped in to stop him. Raoul is Albel's other son and Luke's brother. He told his dad that he's hated him since he was a kid because Albel only cared about power and treated his family badly. Raoul was much stronger than before, but his father was still on another level. Albel started pushing Raoul back with a fierce attack, and Raoul was quickly reaching his limit. Raoul was fighting his father Edel, but the old man was way too strong. Even though they both had the Sword Saint gift, the age and experience gap was just too big. Raoul realized he couldn't win on his own, so he called out to his brother Luke for help. Luke had a special power to buff his allies, but they had to become part of his village first. Raoul hated Luke, but he hated his dad even more, so he agreed to join the village. Luke used his villager enhancement skill, and suddenly Raoul's power doubled. Luke threw Raoul a potion to heal his injury. With his strength boosted and his wounds gone, Raoul charged at his father. He was moving so fast that he was almost a blur. Their swords crashed with a loud metallic bang, and Edel was actually pushed back. The soldiers watching were shocked because the legendary Edel was finally being overwhelmed. While the fight was intense, a small man named Pimpinella appeared out of nowhere. He was one of Edel's 4 top generals and an expert at sneaking around. He stabbed a knife into Luke's back, thinking he could stop the buff on Raoul. However, Luke didn't even react. It turned out the Luke standing there was just a body double. The knife and the poison did nothing. The village soldiers got angry and quickly jumped on Pimpinella, taking him out of the fight. Edel's obsession with power came from a sad past. When he was only 8, his home was destroyed and his father was killed because they were weak. His mother told him that in this world, the strong take things and the weak lose them. From then on, Edel worked until he became the strongest sword saint and built a massive empire. He believed he had to control everything so he would never lose his home again. Back in the present, Raoul was finishing the fight. Edel was tired and bleeding, but he still tried to attack. His sword couldn't take the pressure anymore and snapped in half. Raoul didn't hesitate and landed a final blow, ending the battle. Edel collapsed, finally tasting defeat for the first time in his life. With the war over, Luke decided to move his entire village back to the wilderness. The king was grateful and asked Luke to stay at the palace as a high-ranking official, but Luke turned him down. He just wanted to be a simple village chief. He left a body double at the palace to help the king with work, while Raoul decided to stay behind to retrain the royal army. Even though Edel was supposed to be locked up, he managed to escape the dungeon with his 4 generals. He realized